All right, so cool. We're going. Right, so how's everyone doing? We're gonna do a quick, well, might be quick, might not be quick. We're gonna do a quick how I grade or how I'm grading at the moment. So I'm using the Sony FS5 Mark II and a Shogun 7 monitor. So that's getting me ProRes Raw. So it's giving me like loads of flexibility to grade. So I've had a few messages about DaVinci and all that sort of stuff, and I don't use any of that. So at the moment I'm just using Final Cut Pro, and I wanted to show you the software, some of the plugins that I'm using to get like a nice image. There's amazing colorists out there. I'm just a YouTube kind of teach yourself. So this isn't probably the right way. This is just the way that I do it, that some of you might find it useful. So I'm going to run through what I'm doing really. So I've got two clips to show you today. Firstly, we've got the lovely Michael Platt, what a handsome man, and then this nice cocktail. Now, so the first thing I do, if I was going to grade these two clips, would be I click on the inspector tab up here, and I'm just going to want to make sure that it hasn't got a automatic camera LUT applied, which is here. You can actually add them on. There's some secret little LUTs down the bottom here, but you could put on like one of these Ludman ones who's an amazing colorist, but and then you could grade off of that. But for this, I'm just going to leave it on none, and you can see there it's got the raw to log conversion here, showing that it recognizes how it's come in. You can change the ISO if you want, so I could drop that right down, but I'm going to leave it at the ISO that it was shot at. The Sony's got like a ridiculously high ISO because it's terrible in low light. Well, the FS5 is. So this is our clip. So the first thing that I do is I'm going to use Color Finale Pro because it's a plugin that I've been using for a while and it works pretty well. So we're going to put an adjustment layer on top of the footage, just like that. Get rid of that. Don't need to see that. Get rid of that. You don't need to see that. Get rid of that. Cool. So Color Finale Pro, add it onto the adjustment layer. I put it on the adjustment layer because then if I need, I can drag that across the rest of the footage if I shot it the same sort of scenario, rather than manually editing like every individual clip for sort of speed of use. So I'm going to click on the clip, open this up here, and then we've got Color Finale. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all the saturation out of the clip, go into my layers, and I'm going to open up a new tone curve. Now what I want to do here is I want to make the shadows as dark as possible for crushing them, and the highlights as bright as possible. So I'm going to pull the shadows over to like here, and then I'm going to bring the highlights up over here, and you can see it's adjusting my waveform on the left. So that's the sort of changes so far, and that would do for now. So I'll leave that on, and then I'm going to bring the saturation exactly back to where it was. So already we're kind of making some moves the way we want to go. So I'll leave that turned on. Now I'm going to keep battering the shadows and highlights for the moment because that's where I kind of want to be before I start manipulating the color. So the next part, oh hello little family chat. So the next part we're going to do is I'm going to pull another curve up. This is great because you can have two, and I'm going to do the traditional S. So I'm going to pull a little bit down at the bottom of the image, and I'm going to push those highlights up here, just like that. So you can toggle them on and off, and it's starting to sort of look a bit better than where we started. Next up, I'm going to add some saturation back into the image, or add a bit more saturation, because I want him to really sort of like pop out, but I don't want to like ruin his beautiful face too much. So that's the saturation. We're going to add some contrast in because I want to have that sort of filmic style. So maybe to about here. And for me, it just looks way too bright still, and there's not enough sort of. He just looks too bright. It just doesn't look very nice. So I'm going to add a color wheel up here. These are great because you can add more color adjustments or more light adjustments if you don't want to do it in Color Finale. So I'm going to bring all those highlights right down here, so you can see watch his face sort of come into sort of true color here, right down. And I'm going to bring the shadows down a little bit, and you can see on the, oh hello, Father's Day chat. So you can see on the waveform here, I'm still not clipping anything. Probably to about here. And I'm going to push up the highlights a little bit. Now you can see that on the waveform, there is a part of the image which is overexposing, which is this super bright LED light on the right hand side, but I'm not really that worried about it because it's just going to do that because it's a fluorescent LED tube, and I just want to make sure he looks nice and sharp or nice and exposed. Now if you zoom in, I'll put a 200%. His skin tone looks good. He's going to hate me zooming in this far, but it looks pretty sharp, it looks pretty good, the colour looks pretty nice. I'm going to come back out to this one here, back out to colour finale, and I might just add a little bit more saturation and then a little bit of sharpness. Because we shot in ProRes Raw, it's pulled all the sharpness out of the image, and yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. I'm going to go back into this colour wheel, and I'm going to pull down the shadows a little bit more because I want it to feel a little bit more moody. We've used a haze machine in this, so I just like them. It looks great. It looks great from the viewer's point of view because you've got this like nice atmospheric like style like setting behind, and yeah, it just feels a bit more, just gives it that bit more volume. I do think I'm going to add a little bit more contrast in as well. Not too much, just a fraction. And yeah, that looks, I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. It looks pretty good. He looks pretty sharp. So for the next clip, we've got a cocktail. We shot this in a restaurant last week. It looks pretty nice. The setting's great. We shot on the edge of the table, put some fruit down. The bar and restaurant looks fantastic because it's just been finished. So we're going to apply the same process again. So I'm going to click on the clip, go to the inspector tab, make sure there's no camera LUT applied, go back to here, and I'm going to pick a nice image, part of the image here, where her hand's in there, so I can make sure the hand, make sure the hand has the right tones. So we're going to add another adjustment layer. So I'm going to go back to this one, adjustment layer. I think I got all these adjustment layers from Ryan Dangle like years ago. You can find them on the tube, but so that's our adjustment layer. So we can do the same process again. I'm going to add a colour finale. I think it's like 200 quid. It's not too bad. Might be worth it, might not be worth it. Seemed alright to me. You probably don't need to use it. I'm probably getting comments from people saying that I'm trash, but hey ho. So I add a colour finale. We're going to do the same process again. So I'm going to pull all the saturation out of the image, go into my layers, onto my curves, and we're going to pull all of those shadows right down. Yeah, and then the highlights are going to bring up, and you can see the waveform is still not clipping, which is the great thing about ProRes Raw. Sounds a bit husky like that, doesn't it? The ProRes Raw. And then we're going to put all the saturation back into the image, so up to here. Cool. Now we're going to do the same process again. So I'm going to add a little bit of contrast just to make it, I want it to like really sort of like pop. I don't want to look at that. You can see on the waveforms on the left hand side how much sort of play you've got before the colour breaks apart. So I'm going to put it to probably about here. I'm going to bring up that saturation, put it to about here, and just toggle it on and off just to check to see where you're up to. So it's looking like a lot better. And then I want to do a little bit more colour work, or light work even. So we're going to do a colour wheel, boom, 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 and I want to bring those midtones down. Bring them down, down, down. And you can see it's not crushing yet. And then we're just going to push up the highlights a little bit, so it's nice and bright. And pull the shadows down a little fraction. And just check where you're at. So add just that little bit more. And then we're going to add some sharpness, because as I said before, ProRes Raw just pulled it all out. So we're going to probably put it like at 30. Now the other thing you can do is you can add a denoiser, which will help, because ProRes Raw doesn't have any sort of denoising software in there when it records the footage, but it's going to take ages to apply it because it's an old iMac. So you can see this was raw, and then this is kind of finished, and I'm pretty happy with where that's at. I mean, yeah, it looks good. We'll be happy with that. So yeah, thanks for, if you managed to make it to the end, to watching all that. If you've got any questions, let me know. And that's the sort of process that I do. Cool. Cheers.